Good afternoon, everyone. The President has made clear that what we are seeing on America's streets is unacceptable. Violence, looting, anarchy, lawlessness are not to be tolerated. Plain and simple. These criminal acts are not protest, they are not statements, these are crimes that harm innocent American citizens. The First Amendment guarantees the right of the people to peaceably assemble. What we saw last night in Washington and across the country was not that. To that end, President Trump is demanding action to protect American citizens, to protect American businesses. 17,000 National Guard are deployed in 24 states, but according to General Milley, only 2 states have deployed more than 1,000. There are 350,000 National Guard available overall, and for the lawlessness we are seeing, far more needs to be done. Governors across the country must act, deploy the National Guard as it's fit, and protect American communities. As President Trump has said repeatedly, it's very important that we have peaceful protesters and support the rights of peaceful protesters, but we cannot allow a situation like what happened in Minneapolis to descend further into lawless anarchy and chaos. And we understand that very well. And with that, I'll take questions. Yes.
To your point, the country is in crisis. There's a global pandemic that has claimed more than 100,000 lives. At least 40 million people are unemployed. There are now protests and racial tension ripping apart many cities. Where is the president? Why has he not delivered an address to the nation, as many of his predecessors have in a time of domestic crisis?
So the president has delivered multiple statements on this. The president, as recently as 48 hours ago, was out talking about what a tragedy the death of George Floyd was, how it has weighed on his heart, and how he encourages peace and lawfulness in our streets and peaceful protests. So he has said that repeatedly. He's made many statements to this effect, but what I would note is continual statements, as he's made day and day and day and day again, they don't stop anarchy. What stops anarchy is action, and that's what the president is working on.
The anarchists, you said this morning that the president is focused right now on rooting out Antifa. George Floyd did not die in Antifa custody, he died in police custody. What's the president doing to reform policing tactics and excessive use of force by police?
Yeah, so it's an important question for sure. And this president, if you look at the actions his DOJ has taken, there's a civil rights investigation into the death of Ahmaud Arbery. There's a civil rights investigation into the death of George Floyd. It is a tragedy what we saw. I mentioned to you that the president was extremely upset when he saw that video. And he continues to, the DOJ continues to pursue those charges, and he's recognized injustices for a long time, since he was a candidate. He talked about Sandra Bland and what a terrible video that was too. So he recognizes injustices where they are, but at the same time he also recognizes that we can't allow organized groups like Antifa to commit some of the heinous acts that we've seen.
In his call with the governors, the president said that he had put General Milley in charge of all this. What does that mean?
Yeah, so
encarregado. O que significa?
So I'm not going to get ahead of any actions that will be announced, but what I will say to you is this, that he has had 2 briefings today with Secretary Esper and AG Barr, and General Milley was there, and there will be additional federal assets deployed across the nation. There will be a central command center in conjunction with the state and local governments that will include General Milley, Secretary Esper, and AG Barr, but I won't go any further in announcing what actions.
Explain what the president meant when he told the governors, I have put General Milley in charge. What does that mean? That sounds like a total break. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff being in charge of a domestic issue.
And ensuring that, as the president has said, and this has been taken out of context, by the way, that our streets are dominated with a police force and with a National Guard presence, so that, let me explain a little bit about how this works. If there's a peaceful protest, police will form a line. And what we've seen are those lines have been overwhelmed by massive protests that have turned into riots, the peaceful protests to be distinguished from the riots we've seen. And when those lines are overwhelmed, law enforcement gets on the defense. So what the president has said is he wants to dominate the streets with National Guard, with the police presence. And what studies have shown, as General Milley noted, he was in that governor's call, and his points all pertain to the National Guard. And he noted that there are several studies that when there's an overwhelming National Guard presence, it actually de-escalates the situation and causes less civil unrest. So General Milley has really been on point in talking about the National Guard, the effectiveness, and ensuring that they're utilized to great effect across the country.
What's been taken out of context? I have the exact that quote, it's a very simple one. He just says that he has put General Milley in charge.
No, I wasn't suggesting that quote was out of context. The dominate, I've seen some networks that have talked about dominating protesters, and I've been around the president all day, and anytime he's used the word dominate, it was with regard to dominating the streets and ensuring that we have peace
Na
in our
verdade, ele quis
streets.
dizer que está dominando as ruas e assegurando a paz.
Yes, thanks.
In addition to the
Além
talk the
do
president has been talking about
o
taking
presidente está
action against
falando
looters
sobre
and some of the violent
tomar uma
elements in the
atitude
protests
contra
that
os que
we've seen, why
protestam,
isn't he
fazem arruaça,
also supplementing that message by calling on
aumentar
these people
essa
to
mensagem
remain calm, to go
dos
home,
elementos
to not
violentos,
destroy property,
não
businesses,
destruir as
so on.
propriedades,
Yeah,
os
he has
negócios.
done that
Ele
repeatedly.
fez,
Look, he talked about
repito,
understanding the pain that people are feeling, and he
entendimento da dor
does
que as pessoas
understand
estão
that pain.
sentindo,
He's talked several
entender a
times
dor,
about the
falou
right to
várias
peacefully
vezes
protest,
sobre o
and I've
direito
seen
de
some of these
protesto
peaceful protests, some of these
pacífico.
sit-ins,
Isso está
and it's a real
acontecendo
shame
nas cidades,
when
mas
you
é
have
uma
anarchy
vergonha quando
and
nós temos
anarchists come in, and you have
anarquistas
Antifa come in, and it really dilutes the
Antifa
message of the
está
protesters, and it's a
comandando
legitimate reason they're protesting. So
razão pela
he
qual estão
hates to
protestando.
see
Ele
Antifa come in
odeia
and really dampen that message,
ver
which has
a
been in many
Antifa,
cases peaceful, but has been
espalhando essa
overtaken and
mensagem.
overwhelmed by an organized effort of people from
E
out
as
of state
pessoas de
coming
fora
in
do
and
estado
causing havoc.
entrando e fazendo tudo
Is he
isso.
traveling on Friday? Is he going to Maine?
He still plans on going to
Ele
Maine. I
está
haven't heard any other changes to that
planejando
effect.
fazer isso
We
e
just-
outras
I like your
mudanças
mask.
vão
That's really
acontecer.
cool.
I have a quick follow-up about police reform.
A reforma da
National Security
política, a
Advisor
segurança
Robert
nacional,
O'Brien says
o
he does not think
conselheiro
there
da
is
política
systemic
nacional
racism among law
fala
enforcement in the U.S.
sistema
Does
de
President Trump
racismo.
share that view?
Look, I think
presidente
where the
está
president stands is he
essa
does not
visão.
believe, he
Ele não
fundamentally
acredita,
rejects the idea
ele
that these
rejeita
egregious
a
actions
a
of these
ideia
four
das
Minnesota
ações
officers are representative of our police
dos
force
policiais
as
de
a whole.
Minnesota.
Most of our officers in
Os
this
nossos
country are good,
policiais são
hardworking men and
bons,
women who work
mulheres
every day to
bons,
police our
trabalham,
streets.
homens e
He's
mulheres bons
recognized
trabalham
cases of
muito. Ele
injustice.
reconhece
I
os casos
noted
de
Sandra
injustiça
Bland back when he was in the
que
primary. I
aconteceu
noted more recently
primeiramente,
Ahmaud Arbery
recentemente,
and then George Floyd. So
e
he
George
recognizes
Floyd,
these
ele
injustices.
reconhece
He puts a
as
focus on them, but he
injustiças,
also
se foca
recognizes
nela, mas também
our valiant
reconhece
police officers who have
nossos
taken to the streets
valentes
each and every
oficiais
night
de
over the last
polícia,
6 nights and
polícia que
protected our
trabalham dia e
communities.
noite para proteger nossas comunidades.
Can you explain what the
Você
legal
pode
authority the
explicar a
president
autoridade
has is for
legal que o
designating
presidente tem
Antifa
de
as a
designar
terrorist organization?
Antifa
And can you
como uma
also talk
organização
about why
terrorista? Você pode
he
falar
does
sobre
not want to label
que ele não gosta de
white
rotular
supremacist
os
groups that are
direitos dos grupos que são domesticamente
located as terrorist
localizados como
organizations as well.
organizações
So let me address the
terroristas
first
também.
part about legal
A primeira
authority.
parte
Title
sobre
18, Section 2331
Título
allows
18
that the term,
permite que o
it
termo
defines domestic terrorism as involving acts dangerous to human life that
terrorismo
appear
quando
intended to
envolve perigo
influence the
à
policy
vida
of a
humana.
government and other elements are laid
Outros
out, and it
elementos
allows
também
the Department of
são-
Justice, when
são
utilizing this statute, to invoke greater
Estatuto
investigatory
de
authority and to invoke
investigar
harsher penalties. I would note that
e
the Justice
colocar as
Department has
penalidades.
in the past
No passado,
used domestic
usou
terrorism in
terrorismo
consultation with
doméstico,
acts of
consulta
white supremacy or racially motivated acts, like in April
motivar
2020, a
atos
Florida
como
man
esses,
pled guilty to threatening an
mas
African-American
também
Charlottesville City Council candidate.
homens
And at
americanos
that time, the
aconteceu
FBI
na
Joint
África,
Terrorism Task Force was utilized. Same in the
e
case
a
of
Força
February
Tarefa,
2020, where it was
20
used in connection to 4
de
racially
fevereiro, em
motivated violent
conexão,
extremists. And I would also note the president's
motivando
long history of
extremistas
condemning white
violentos.
supremacy and racism. There is no place in society for these egregious, despicable
uma
ideologies.
ideologias de supremacia branca são muito ruins.
Groups as terrorist organizations.
It has been used, I explained how in this case that
nesse
domestic
caso,
terrorism will be
como
used as a way that
doméstico está
the
sendo
crime is
usado como
prosecuted.
modo
It's
de
a prosecutorial method, and it was utilized in the
método
same exact
de
way
perseguição,
with
do mesmo
regard to
modo
white
em
supremacy.
relação à supremacia branca.
Kayleigh, on the Minnesota police officers,
Os
is he
policiais de
suggesting
Minnesota,
that they should be charged as
eles
well
devem
as the
ser
officer who's already been charged, the other three?
usados
And also
os
on
outros três.
Antifa, can you explain a little bit
Você pode
about
explicar
how would he know, or how
como ele
is he talking
sabe,
about how you would
como ele fala
identify
sobre
members of
identificar membros da
Antifa? Since they're
Antifa,
a very loose organization, it would be very
sendo que é
difficult to
uma
tell who is part of it.
organização muito
So first, I
falhada.
was just on
Quem
the
é
call with
parte
the
dela?
president where he
presidente
expressed his dismay with those
disse que
3
ele
officers who watched. I'll leave it to the
expressou
state
o
to
desagrado
pursue
dos
those
oficiais
charges
que
if they decide
policiais
to.
que
It
assistiram
was the state
tudo.
that pursued the initial charge, but the president
O
has
presidente
expressed his
tem
complete dismay with
expressado
those actions.
seu desprezo com as
With
ações.
Antifa, I do
Mas
think it's
Antifa,
important
eu
to
acho
note note that they are a big element of this protest. AG Barr has noted that. Ambassador O'Brien has noted that. We have ample evidence that DOJ has received indicating that Antifa is responsible for that unrest, but as to exactly how Antifa is identified, that would be more of a question for DOJ. Yes.
When you talk about additional federal assets, does the President have authority to deploy forces across the country beyond the National Guard?
Além da Guarda
He does.
Nacional,
And look, we're looking at every tool in the federal toolkit available to us. You know, ideally, this would have been resolved at the state level. The states, after all, have the police power embedded in the 10th Amendment, and it is their responsibility to control their streets. But you're right to say that there are many federal authorities, including the one you cited,
autoridades
available to
federais
us.
estão carregadas disso.
In the phone call today?
The focus of the call with the governors was really the National Guard, not that specific tool in the toolkit that you mentioned, but the National Guard and how it should be utilized much stronger than it's currently being utilized. Yes, I will go to, let's see, Jeff.
Okay, thanks. Following up on what John was asking earlier, Governor Whitmer, she said she found the president's call today deeply disturbing, and she said the president told the governors they need to put it down or they would be overridden. So what, I mean, is there a specific authority he's using? Because as you know, really prevents the use of the army to put down domestic insurrection of any kind.
Yeah, I don't know why Governor Whitmer would be dismayed at the president telling governors to do their job. It is their responsibility to police their streets. They have the police power embedded in the Constitution. They have quite clearly, many of them, failed to do their job. Look at the scenes we have seen. And it's gotten to the point where today the president has said, enough is enough. You know, there are tools I can use, namely deploying National Guard, many others that Steve cited one, the Insurrection Act. It's one of the tools available, whether the president decides to pursue that, that's his prerogative. Right now, we're looking at a focus on the National Guard. That's where it currently stands. And, you know, there's a distinction between the National Guard and military forces in the street. I would note the National Guard are friends and neighbors in these communities who are used, and as I noted, the study from General Milley used to great effect when they are deployed. So the focus of the call was the National Guard, encouraging the deployment, far more than the 17,000 out there, and utilizing them this evening, certainly.
Essa noite, com certeza.
Would you like to see 100,000 National Guard on the street or 200,000?
I won't put a number on it. I think it's incumbent on governors to look at the situation. You know, a case in Texas might not merit the same thing as, you know, New York City. So he's encouraging the governors to up those levels, but there's not a specific number that he has in mind. David.
Os níveis, mas eles vão decidir.
There is a perception that the president is hiding in the bunker on the racial protest issue. He was literally put in a bunker on Friday night by the Secret Service. I mean, would you agree that he is hiding out on this issue, and is that a good posture to be in?
I would not agree with that at all. Look, I was on the phone with the president at least half a dozen times yesterday, and every time I talked to him, he was telling me about a different action he had taken, whether it was talking to a governor about this or a foreign leader about ventilators. This president has been leading. He met with generals yesterday. He's each and every moment taking another action to try to solve and resolve what we've seen in our streets where the governors have failed. He's stepped in. He's acting. He's hard at work. You've heard from him on this issue any number of times, and he's working because that's the job of the president, is to keep this country safe.
O presidente ter esse país seguro.
I really think that that's a misnomer in the media. You know, it was really appalling some of the coverage I saw, like the New York Times yesterday made no mention of the myriad times that the president has spoken on this issue. Instead, in paragraph 14, they made a cursory mention of his remarks at Space Force, most of which, at least half of which, pertain to George Floyd. There was a Washington Post article with an egregious headline about Trump staying silent. He hasn't been silent on this. I have a whole list of his remarks there, and instead, paragraph 23, they note, oh wait, we're contradicting our own headline. The president did in fact make remarks contrary to the silent headline. You had Don Lemon on CNN saying at 9:38 p.m. on Saturday night, the president's been silent. Ironically, that comment came 4 hours after the president was quite audibly speaking at this issue. I was there for the remarks, and then you had CNN double down the next day, Sunday afternoon, saying the president was silent. And, you know, I don't want to bore you with reading out all of his statements, but it sounds like I should read a few, like the president saying it's a grave tragedy that filled Americans all over the country with horror, anger, and grief, and I stand before you as a friend and ally to every American seeking justice. He said, I understand the pain the people are feeling. I can go on, but I would just be repeating what the president has already said, because make no mistake, This
não vai
president has
fazer
not been silent,
nenhum
and at
erro.
this
Ele não vai
moment he
ficar
is acting
silencioso
to
e ele
protect this
está
country from the
agindo para
lawlessness we
proteger
saw
esse
just
país
out here in Lafayette
fora
Park
da
last
lei,
night.
aqui e lá fora.
In a particularly egregious act,
Particularmente, eu
St. John's
concordo
Church,
que
Church of the Presidents, was targeted last
uma
night.
igreja do presidente foi
Graffiti all
alvo,
over, set on fire.
foi
What is the
colocado
President's reaction to
fogo
that,
nela.
please?
Qual foi a reação
It's
do
hurtful.
presidente?
Honestly, I think it's hurtful on a number of levels. Look, the VA was defaced. Literally, the word veteran spray painted out of the placard in front of the Department of Veteran
colocados
Affairs.
com spray.
The Lincoln Memorial defaced. How does that make much sense? The place where the March on Washington began, that momentous occasion in the history of civil rights. That memorial was defaced last night. That doesn't honor the legacy of George Floyd. It doesn't. And certainly not the burning of St. John's Church. Look, St. John's, I think it's important to go through a little bit of this, but Reverend John C. Harper was the St. John's rector many centuries ago, at least decades, centuries and a few decades ago. And here's what he was told. He was told he needed to close St. John's because he couldn't leave it open for the March on Washington because, quote, it might be a bloodbath. But he stood boldly. He stood boldly and he stood on the side of justice. And on the day the March on Washington happened, here's what was sung from that church. One family on earth are we throughout its widest span. Oh, help us everywhere to see the brotherhood of man. And of course, we know that the March on Washington ended with Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. giving that incredible speech, I Have a Dream. And that church, the same church that was burning last night, here's what they said, taking that bold stance to support Martin Luther King. They said this church building is open as it has always been, so all who want to worship here. The ministry of this parish is extended to any who seek it. Our fellowship with one another has no limitations whatsoever. That church supported the bold civil rights moment of the March on Washington, which began at the Lincoln Memorial. That doesn't honor the legacy of George Floyd. It doesn't further the cause. And those are violent anarchists, antifa, who are taking advantage of the pain of people, the pain of the peaceful protesters. It's inexcusable, and we have to stand as one America against the burning of the church and the defacement of the Lincoln Memorial. Chanel.
Is it possible that DC will be placed under martial law in order to protect these national monuments from further destruction? And second, under the Civil Rights Act of 68, will this administration investigate
investigou
organizações do Congresso, políticas
estão
Yeah, you know, on Antifa, I think at this point we're pursuing the domestic terrorism angle. That's what the DOJ has decided. And what was your first question? Was about martial law?
A sua primeira
protect national monuments in
Yes, so I have not
proteger
heard that discussed.
monumentos
Any other
nacionais. Não tem como discutir isso.
You confirm a phone call earlier today between Presidents Trump and Putin.
Uma ligação entre o
And if so,
presidente
considering what the
e o
President
governador
said to
e
governors
sobre o que ele
later in the
disse
day,
aos
did he
governadores.
ask
Ele
President
pediu
Putin for advice on how to quell unrest
aconselhamento
in
do
his own
presidente
country?
I
Putin.
don't have any details
Eu
on
não
that
tenho
call.
detalhes
I
sobre a
wasn't a part of it,
ligação,
but
não estava
and I am
participando.
not entirely certain what was
Eu não
discussed, but
sei
the call
o que
did
foi
take place.
discutido e quando
Yes.
aconteceu.
Does the president regret using phrases like when the shooting starts, the looting
presidente teve
starts, the shooting starts, and
algum problema
phrases
com o
like
início
Bishop
dos
stops? Is he considering
tiros
apologizing?
e
So the president
o
on the
presidente
looting
sobre
point, he was taken
o
wildly
continuamento,
out
ele
of
está-
context.
foi
Twitter,
tirado tudo que ele
it's
quis, foi
interesting to
tirado do
watch. I've
contexto
seen
no
multiple
Twitter.
instances of
Muitas
real incitement
instâncias
of violence on Twitter, but they've
de
never
incitação de
penalized
violência no
those
Twitter,
users. Like, for
mas nunca são
instance,
penalizados esses
Iran, we've
usuários.
seen horrific
Nós
tweets from
vimos
the Iranian regime about the elimination of the
tweets
Zionist
horríveis
regime, to
sobre,
quote them, and that was never
o
flagged.
Irã.
Interesting that their
É
gut instinct was to
interessante
flag the
que
president, and they did
marcaram
so
o
in
presidente
an
e
accurate way. The
de
president
forma
very
precisa,
clearly
o
laid out what he
presidente
meant by that tweet, that looting leads to shooting.
que
And we have
o
seen the
amotinamento
unfortunate killing
leva
of one
aos
person in
tiroteios.
Minneapolis. There were 7 people
Tinha
shot in
7
St. Louis
pessoas
riot a
baleadas
few nights ago,
em
and the
São
president
Luís.
clearly
O
laid out what he meant,
presidente
but it is
falou
interesting to watch
que
the
ele
gut
queria
instinct
dizer.
of Twitter to
Mas
go
no
ahead and
esse
label
instinto no Twitter
what the
de
president
ir à
said as
frente
somehow
e
inciting
rotular que o
violence, which it
presidente
absolutely
disse que
was
está
not.
incitando
But look, I
violência.
want
Isso
to
não
say
aconteceu.
this:
Eu
we
quero dizer
cannot
isso.
let
Nós não podemos
violence,
deixar a
and we cannot let
violência, nós
looting and a
podemos
few
deixar
bad
o
actors divide us as an
e
American
algumas
people.
pessoas
The
ruins
American
violentar as
spirit
pessoas
is defined by
americanas.
love
O
and
espírito
mutual
americano é
acceptance
definido
and
por
kindness.
amor,
And despite the horrific scenes
bons
we've seen
sentimentos
play
que
throughout the
vimos,
media, there's
o
some
que foi
things
espalhado na
that we
mídia,
haven't
algumas
seen. And I
coisas
think
que
it's
não
important
vimos.
for
É
the American
importante
people to see them. And Judd, I'm going to call for that soundbite now, some video that I think is very important for us all to watch.
Para todos nós assistir.
We want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest.
Não protesto. Caminhe conosco.
Not 1 ounce of damage. Nobody's arrested. Nobody got hurt.
Ninguém foi preso. É assim que deveria ser.
A human chain protecting an officer separated from his unit.
As pessoas protegendo o policial que estava sozinho. Nós estamos aqui com vocês. Tudo bem?
Across the country, we've seen examples of police protecting protesters and protesters embracing police, and it's been beautiful to watch, though those images have not been played all that often. And I just want to leave you with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. Thank
Lutar
you.
juntos como irmãos, ou iremos perecer como inimigos. Obrigado. Nós terminamos a transmissão. Aqui é Marina Caproni, da TranslatedPress Português. Muito obrigada por assistir.